me? For real? Oh. You can call from the Bahamas using Rev Boy's prepaid home phone service and prepaid chat cards for much less.
Hey girl, are you ready?
You get free unlimited on-island calls, voicemail, and no internet service or ID is required.
Hello?
Rev Boy's prepaid home phone service and prepaid chat cards.
Hey, vai bien.
Staying in touch never sounded so good.
Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned in to NB12 broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios. Coming up tonight in news, government optimistic about slashing debt and increasing revenue. But what does the opposition think of the new budget? Relief on the way for flood victims. This as another round of rainfall leaves at least one area flooded. Plus, the BEC Workers Union rejects sabotage claims. We've got those stories and much more. I'm Bonnie Toot and NB12 starts now. Tonight, on the heels of more than $600 million in borrowing this fiscal year, Prime Minister Perry Christie today outlined the 2013-2014 budget, a budget for which government will seek to borrow $465 million to cover. Christina McNeil explains what that means for the country's economy and how government plans to improve that position over the next fiscal year.
Prime Minister Perry Christie expressing optimism as he introduced the 2013-2000 budget today. It's a budget with ambitious goals to cut government debt and grow revenue, and it's all on the backdrop of shortfalls in gross domestic product growth. Recurrent revenues in 2012-2013 were not as robust as expected, according to the Prime Minister, who cited weaker than projected growth of nominal GDP. The government borrowed $600 million in the 2012-2013 fiscal year. In the upcoming fiscal year, government is projecting recurrent expenditure of $1.7 billion. Despite previous shortfalls in GDP and revenues, Christie and Minister of State for Finance, Michael Halkitis, say government is seeking to cut its debt by nearly 20% over the next 3 to 4 years.
Recurrent revenues in 2013 to 14 will be enhanced by the ongoing projected modest growth of nominal GDP. They will also be bolstered by the various revenue adjustments and enhancements measures that I have announced in this communication. On the basis of the measures that I have outlined, recurrent revenues in 2013 to 2014 are projected at $1,503 million, still leaving, Mr. Speaker, a gap from the forecast of $1,580 million.
We think it's realistic. As you see, this in the last budget, we forecast a deficit of 6.5%. Even in the face of reduced revenues, we were able to actually beat that forecast and get it down to just it's about 6.2% this year that will be concluding. We forecast next year that we will get that down to 5.1%. Earlier this year, we indicated to all the agencies and departments that we needed them to be more disciplined and more thorough and to identify savings in their budgets. We've been very successful with that, and we'll give you more details, but we're happy with the results of that.
Halkitis defending government borrowing in a press conference following the budget communication today. He says although government is borrowing $465 million to cover the upcoming fiscal year, that figure is down from what government borrowed in 2012.
We are gradually consolidating, putting our finances on a better footing. It's a gradual process. We have to do it gradually so that we do not put too much shocks into the economy. And so, while we are borrowing additional funds, we're happy that we are moving in the direction where we are borrowing less, and we look forward to when we have successfully implemented this budget and we go into the next budget, the number that we do next year will be even lower.
The Prime Minister says government will move to act decisively to tackle debt through fiscal consolidation and transformation, reining in spending. The hope is to move from constant deficits to surpluses. Christie outlined measures to enhance recurrent revenues.
We are implementing a fundamental reform of our tax system, including the introduction of a value-added tax in July 2014. We are steadily proceeding with the establishment of the new Central Revenue Agency. We are continuing to pursue a thorough and comprehensive reform and modernization of the real property tax system. We are advancing our program to modernize the Customs Department, and we are moving ahead with the plan to introduce the new excise stamps for tobacco products.
Meanwhile, government is awaiting the completion of a comprehensive review and assessment of all government revenue areas. That review is expected to help identify means to further enhance government revenue collection moving forward. Despite the challenges, Christie and his government are confident in this budget. He says there is no alternative course of action. Reporting for NB12, I'm Christina McNeil.
Bahamians will get to review a draft of the proposed value-added tax legislation by early summer. Prime Minister Christie revealed as much during his budget communication today, adding that the introduction VAT is expected to significantly enhance government's recurrent revenues. Leaders of the opposition described the new budget as a vacuum, claiming it fails to adequately address the main issues plaguing the country. Celeste Nixon has that angle.
Shortly after Prime Minister Perry Christie made his budget communication in the House of Assembly today, Opposition Leader Dr. Hubert Minnis said they were disappointed and warned that the pledges were another batch of empty promises.
I look at this budget as nothing more than a vacuum. It's just an empty budget. It's a typical vacuum budget. The Prime Minister said that this budget they will fulfill the pledges they've made to the Bahamian public. They've made pledges today, they've made pledges before. The record speaks for himself. The pledges that they've made before, they were not able to keep. Are we going through the same scenario again?
Minnis said Christie has presented a rosy budget that hasn't fully outlined what tax increases will be felt by the Bahamian public. In Parliament, Minister of State for Finance Michael Halkitis said the government will seek to borrow $465 million for current expenditure. During the mid-year budget in February, the government sought and received approval to borrow $100 million in additional funding for expenditure from the 2011-2012 fiscal year. Last year, the government borrowed $550 million to cover its deficit for 2012-2013. According to Member of Parliament for St. Anne's, Hubert Chipman, this additional funding will mean the government sought to borrow over $1 billion this fiscal period.
The government is about to borrow $465 million. What that equates to is the government borrowed $600 million during the first 8 months of this year. So when you look at it, the government would have borrowed in excess of $1 billion just for this fiscal period that we're just coming out of. This is not a capital item. You know, you invest in capital item and you borrow those type of money. You invest in $468 million to pay bills? Unheard of.
Also criticizing the budget, Deputy Opposition Leader Loretta Butler-Turner said the Family Islands weren't properly represented in the budget.
Being a representative for the Family Islands, I was left with the feeling that there's a huge void with regards to what is going to happen in the Family of Islands. Everything seemed to be very generalized. I did hear certain Family Islands articulated for education and a few other projects, but I must admit that it appears once again that the public's money, the Bahamian people's money, is not being used equitably in the development of Family Islands.
With the government intending to allocate an additional $10 million to urban renewal, Butler-Turner called for an account of funds already spent on the initiative. Reporting for MB12, I'm Celeste Nixon.
Our news team visited one area that took a beating last week to see how residents fared last night.
That was off the chain. It was off the chain Tuesday. I never seen that like that in my life.
Though overnight calls to the National Emergency Management Agency were scarce, residents of low-lying areas like Pinewood Gardens woke up this morning to find their yards and streets flooded. On Jacaranda Street, rainwater in one family's yard was nearly knee-deep. The front door was barricaded with old couches to prevent flooding. In the street, black garbage bags, a white door, red cooler, and other discarded items were floating in murky rainwater. Sporting a crumpled yellow raincoat, resident Andrew Newbold walked the streets this morning picking up neighbors' floating trash.
It's bad. Water's over the wall. And plenty people, garbage stems flying through the water and things. I will come up and take them up in the rain.
Destroyed furniture thrown out following last week's storm still littered some yards, once again drenched by what Met officials have called excessively prolonged rainfall. Ina Burrows, who has lived on this street for 18 years, says she started panicking last night when rainwater began seeping into her laundry room.
I believe it just came in through a crack, probably wasn't like sealed properly, and that probably caused that. But like last week, it just came up that high, so it just flowed through.
Are you afraid of what could possibly happen over the next 2 days, though?
I really do, because the water keep coming up. So what else could we do? See, and when the cars pass, you see that the water flow right in.
Off Pigeon Plum Street, 81-year-old grandmother Gloria Robinson Hepburn couldn't even get into her backyard.
You go in the back of the yard, and I just went to get some food in the dog cup. And I had to tie this up and carry the bowl and rest it down, and the water around just settled. Most houses car in the back of the yard. You can't walk in the back there. Water settled. Deep. The water that high on the ground.
Now, or was that last week?
That's from last night rain. And I washed yesterday, my clothes ain't dry yet. 2-3 line out there blown down and wet right up. I hope I get them dry.
Burrows says Pinewood Gardens residents can't seem to catch a break. After spending tens of thousands of dollars over the years to elevate her yard and replace ruined furniture, she says she's sick and tired of this problem.
They need to find a solution to this problem because it was existed for so long. And everybody keeps saying they know the problem, but it seems like no one could find what the problem is to help the water. The water just keep flowing whenever it rains. And I think the drains need to clean and find some way to flush the water out if it's only by the sea somewhere.
Well, help is on the way for flood victims in eastern and southern New Providence. State Minister for Finance Michael Halkitis laid a copy of Exigency Order Number 2, 2013 in the House of Assembly today.
The Minister of Finance hereby declares that for New Providence, the importation of goods specified in the schedule hereto are permitted for a period of 90 days commencing on the 28th of May, 2013. And under the schedule, Mr. Speaker, are building materials.
Honourable members.
Under the schedule, building materials, electrical fixtures and materials, plumbing fixtures and materials, household furniture, fixtures, furnishings and appliances, freezers and heaters, materials for cleanup or repair to property, including fences and motor vehicles.
Opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis immediately stood to ask government to consider doing more for flood victims.